Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Board Budget Subcommittee meeting for today, June 21st. As a reminder, this is for our Board of Education meeting, which would normally happen on Wednesday, June 23rd. It is happening Thursday, June 24th this week. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Trustee Zhang and Trustee Prasad to carry forward with the meeting.
Thank you, Superintendent. So one thing I'm noting here that we don't have our student board member. Normally we had the student board member join. So I don't know if he has the invites or not. So then let's see.
Excuse me, Trustee Prasad, what is our student board member's last name again, please?
This is Tushar.
Okay, so now I got him. He's just coming in.
Yeah.
Okay, let me admit him. He's on the waiting room. So.
Okay. Okay. Well, welcome Tushar to this meeting. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay. Perfect. So now we can start. So the way we do this, Tushar, for you, this is the first time, right? So we just walk through the agenda items and then we discuss which agenda items have a financial impact, and if there are any specific questions that would be that we would need to answer for ourselves or for the community, we clarify over here.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we don't stop on every agenda item. So we'll just go through and for consent, we'll pick the more meaningful amounts and then we'll go to the main agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as we look at the first item here that has a budget impact, I'm looking at section 10. The first one that has an impact is 10.6. So the Inform K-12. So this is an efficiency, a workflow type solution, right, for the district. And this is the first time. So right now everything is on paper. This will create some efficiencies in the district and more things can be tracked. So CJ, you want to just give a quick value proposition or Mr. Parunga?
Yes, yes. Many of our forms right now are done manually. There are few that are done electronically just because we have a current system that allows for it. For example, our current financial system has a built-in workflow that allows to get purchase orders and budget transfers. However, we have many other forms that are still done manually because there are no existing applications or system that is behind it. For example, expense reimbursement. There are other forms within the business services, within the human resources, student support services that are all done manually. And they move around the organization via paper and through the pony mail. What this will bring is for us to be able to automate all of that, mimic the forms, allow us to be able to fill out the forms online, and there would be a built-in workflow that then would move this forms through signatures via electronic. We believe that this will provide us efficiencies as a result of that, and would be able to track any documents that actually pass through the system. I think the COVID-19 or the pandemic actually brought in some opportunities here, because now we were able to do some different solutions like DocuSign, but which unfortunately DocuSign have some limited capabilities on it. And so what Inform K-12 would be able to bring is a much more complete solution in terms of forms, contract signing, and few other forms that we could move through electronically. So.
Okay, I mean, that's good. So in the cost analysis, this is a financial outlay in terms of the dollars, right? We'll save some money in the DocuSign and HR contract. But is there a dollar amount for what you might save because of efficiencies?
Oh, well, there would be probably some time savings that is not included right here that we weren't able to quantify. But because the intention is to not reduce the hours of the people who are holding these documents, but instead to be able to utilize those hours into something else, into something that is also more productive. So yes, there are some time element savings that we did not include in this calculation.
Okay, yeah, and perhaps in the this would be good to quantify over time. And I see there's an implementation cost of $25,000 that probably would be for a few workflows that you talked about. And would the staff get training? So future workflows will be built ourselves, or will we have to pay more every time there's an additional workflow to enable?
No, what this amount will do is that part of the implementation is that the Inform K-12 will meet with every department and identify every single form that we need to convert. And that would be including conversion of the forms, plus the training, plus building the workflow that is associated with it. So that the 25,000 encompasses all of that.
And if there's another form next year, so then we would have to hire them again to do that additional.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Any questions, Trustee Zhang?
Yes, I do have a question. When you say when we have another form, but I thought that would be included, right? Because every year you would have some new forms and you just put it on. It should not require any additional implementation cost. This would be setup cost.
This would be the initial implementation cost. That's why I think our strategy is when they meet with specific department, that they would provide an exhaustive list of all the forms and all the workflow that is associated with it. And so hopefully that would cover, if not 100%, at least 99% of the forms. But I think to the point that Trustee Prasad made, if there is a new form, just because we are changing the process, will that be an additional cost? And the answer is yes.
Oh.
Okay, student board member Dalmia, any questions?
Yeah, so I was wondering why for the first year, the budget source is the learning loss mitigation funds, but after that, it's the general fund, since I don't really get how this would be mitigating the learning loss.
Well, the Learning Loss Mitigation Fund is the title of the fund, but if you look at the list of allowable expenses within that fund, this falls under that category. The Learning Loss Mitigation Funds, including few others, includes under the umbrella of CARES Act, which pretty much addresses any cost associated with as a result of the pandemic. This one here is our way of addressing our forms so that they don't move in person, because I think if they move electronically, which similar to what we have done during pandemic, is we were using DocuSign in order for contracts to be signed to avoid any physical contact or any potential transmission of the virus. And so this is our way of addressing that, so that papers don't move, and then there would be less contact, and then hopefully would be less contamination, if you may. And so that's why we are using the Learning Loss Mitigation Fund for the first year. But because there are limits into those funds in terms of the timing, once those are, after a certain period of time, those money are no longer available, and that's why we're proposing unrestricted general fund in the subsequent years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Then moving on, 10.7 is a small dollar amount for document tracking services. Any questions on this one? No. Then the
No.
next,
No.
the payroll warrants and POs. Is there anything extraordinary in there to list for the public or for us here?
In the
Go ahead, please, Mr. Paranga.
but both on the payroll warrants and purchase orders, periodically you will see a significant numbers, particularly coming from Fund 21, or commonly known as the Measure E. And naturally, just because the contracts generally are bigger when you are writing checks or writing purchase order for a general contractor or for the construction of our building. And so when you see large amount under Fund 21, those are primarily contracts that was approved by the board in previous board meetings. And so we have a very tight control here in terms of what goes, how POs are approved, making sure that before a PO gets approved, that has been approved by the board. Consequently, when the payments are due, they are under, well, not the payroll warrants, but on the purchase orders. And so on the payroll warrants, they're pretty much like the same almost every period. So.
Yeah, so we just ask what if there's anything extraordinary to list, and the answer seems to be no.
Nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay.
Well, I want to ask, clarify that, you know, the Measure E fund, it's not because we approve it and then it's going to be in this category, is that we paid in a timely during the last quarter, right? It's tracking by the time we pay the fund, not we approve the fund.
I think the 11.1 is primarily for payroll, and so Measure E won't be on it. 11.2, however, is the approval of the purchase order. And so in the purchase order, those are the purchase orders under Measure E are all approved by the board.
Okay, got it. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Then the next one with some financial impact is the 11.4 quarterly investment report.
So we're providing you this information.
We have the 1% rate of return. Now, one question I had earlier was this 1%, does that add back into the market value, or does that come to our general fund for use during the year?
Well, as you're aware, we have different funds. One of the biggest one is the general fund. We also have the building fund and a few other funds in the district. Each one of those earns this interest, depending on how much cash balance we have in the bank. Any earnings are added into the market value of our funds.
Okay, so this is not like some money that was put aside. This is part of the funds that we have, and we get the money back. So this increases the value, and we have that money available to spend on the approved budgets.
Yes, they are accounted for whenever we present to you the budget. We estimate how much interest we're going to make for each of the fund, and we include them as part of our revenue. So when you look at the budget and when you see the revenue account for each of the fund, interest are included in each one of them, although they are estimate. When we reconcile the actual amount, it would be more or less depending on the percent that is declared for each of the quarter, but they're accounted for as part of the budget.
Sounds good. Any questions? So just feel free to interrupt and chime in, right? So there are many topics on the agenda today. So in the interest of time, we'll keep moving. Yeah. Then 11.6, this is just the LCFF status and report.
Yeah, so this one right here is a part of one of the proposition. I believe it's proposition. Is it
30.
proposition 50?
30.
30. And prior to proposition 30, we receive funds. Any amount in our LCFF that is not covered by the property tax are backfilled by state aid. Well, when Prop 30 came on, state aid were actually split into two, or there's a carve out from state aid called Education Protection Account, or EPA. And so EPA is not additional money. EPA is a subset of state aid. The state just want to be able to have a separate account for it, so much so that that account needs to be spent only for some eligible expenses, one of which is to not allow to expend that money for administration, but it could be used for teacher salaries and a few others. But that is not, I want to emphasize that again, that is not an additional money, it's a subset of a state aid. And so, but we need to certify every year by virtue of a resolution that we are promising that we're spending them on the eligible expenditures.
Okay. So is this like a backward looking resolution, or is this for, okay, this is for 21-22 school year. Okay.
This is for 21-22.
Okay, sounds good. So any questions? Otherwise we move on. So the next one is 11.8, the project stabilization agreement, coordination services. So this is just standard and customary, I suppose. So not much.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, not much to discuss there. And then the security system for Rick's Glankler.
This is also a regular contract or construction related item.
Now, was this something that got pushed out from a previous agenda? I remember talking about security in the last board meeting too.
So this, Raul, did you want to speak
Yes,
on anything?
I recall, Trustee Prasad, I recall exactly what you mentioned. That was for the Lila Bringhurst.
Okay.
And this one is for Rick's Glankler Early Learning Center.
And Kelly, how much was the amount for the other one, the Lila Bringhurst? I think that was much higher than this.
Yes, it was. I can actually research that for you because I don't have that information off the top of my head, but I'll be happy to provide you with additional documentation on that.
Oh, I have a question on this one. So
yes,
when we provide a security system, are we doing the same kind of a product, or is we ask them to redesign for each individual site?
so the product in terms of the equipment that we use is normally the same because we're, you know, we establish a standard and it's always installed the same. In terms of the design, each one of the sites is its own unique sort of entity. So it's designed according to what the needs of that specific site are. So we're not, so like at Lila Bringhurst, we can't say, oh, we're only going to put in 3 cameras because that campus is ginormous. Versus if we go over to a smaller elementary school, 3 cameras may be sufficient based on the orientation and size of that campus. But in terms of the product itself, it will be the same product that we use on all of our sites.
Okay, so does Lila Hurst use the same vendor?
Yes, Sonatrol is the district's security monitoring vendor. And as I had stated before, the district provides its own security services in the sense of we procure our own vendor for security reasons so that we maintain control of that information and it's not just kind of out there for, you know, the world to know what our strategy and our plan is for how we secure our campuses.
And so at what time do we decide implement security system on one side versus the other?
We have not done that. If you recall, Guidepost Solutions and PBK are
Mhm.
doing their security assessments of all of our sites right now. And they're
Right.
due back to report to us sometime in the fall after they've completed their assessment of all 43 sites.
Okay, so I'm a little bit confused. I remember that one. So what's the difference between that one with all the other school site and, you know, versus this
And this
one?
particular one?
Yeah.
So this particular one is actually the procurement of the equipment and an implementation of that equipment at a particular site.
Mhm.
So that's the difference. So the other contract is looking at what we currently have and coming up with a comprehensive plan or a strategy for all of our campuses to then say, okay, if all of our sites have, you know, 2 cameras, they then can come back to us and say, hey, Fremont Unified, that's insufficient based on what we've observed. And this is what we recommend for all 43 sites based on each individual site's conditions. And then Sonatrol is a vendor who will then implement whatever the strategy is that the other folks designed
see.
for us. And then they then would then come back and say, okay, we've been told you need X amount of cameras and devices in these locations. Now we're here to actually implement that for you and actually put that equipment in place.
Okay. Okay, so then the other guy is like a designer, but this one is
Yes.
but then what about this one? This one is this vendor not only design but also implement, as I read from the description.
Yes, they do. They are our current vendor. And because this site is actually, we already have a Sonatrol system on that facility
Oh, got it.
from the
Okay.
previous vendor
Okay.
who was leasing it from us. So we're reactivating what we already have and adding and filling in where the gaps are for that particular site, if that makes any sense.
And
Okay.
just, Kelly, just a little clarification. The property, they weren't leasing it. We acquired the property. We purchased
Okay.
the property from Kidango.
Thank you for that clarification.
And so Kidango was the one who was occupying the facility, and they have the system in place. And when we purchased them in 2017, that we inherited all of that system.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then, so just maybe one follow up on this. So from that design, how many such projects do we expect to spawn from there? That would come to us.
For this particular item, it's specifically only for Rick Splankler.
Correct, yeah. But would we get another one for next campus and the next campus for different sites? So from the overall design project that was done, how many campuses would we get this type of approval request for?
Well, for your modernization projects, this particular scope of work we included in, so you're not necessarily going to see a fee for that because it's built within the construction program. So the contractor will procure, you know, the infrastructure related activities. But I can get back to you and let you know exactly how many we will have, you know, coming forward. But we definitely will have all of our current modernizations will come forward with, if we choose to keep Sonatrol as our vendor, they'll be coming forward with contracts for those specific items, for those specific campuses. And then the others, as I said, sometime in the fall, we should be getting a report back from them, from the designers, to know what we can expect or what their recommendation is for all of our other campuses, and we'll evaluate those on a case-by-case basis based on budget and resources that we have available at that time, and then move forward with whatever direction you all give us at that time.
Okay, so after summer, we'll get to see the overall recommendations, and then
Correct.
The execution would happen over time.
Correct.
Okay, sounds good. Then next one, 11.10 is another project stabilization agreement. So we move on.
11.10 is 11.10. Yeah.
This is for the actual Horner Middle School locker room expansion project. To give you a little history on this, this was a project that evolved out of the new construction and modernization project of the larger campus. And this, because of the size and the, I don't want to say complexity, but DSA, when we approached them to add these particular buildings into our original application, they stated that you all have to actually have a separate application and make it its own project. And based on the conditions of our project stabilization agreement, when we have projects that exceed a certain dollar value, we are required to have PSA services activated for that particular scope of work. So in this instance, that is what this condition has occurred, is that the budget for the locker rooms were over $250,000. And so it triggered the requirement for us to have the PSA agreement services for this particular project. And since it is such a short duration, we solicited our pool of PSA consultants, and the labor compliance managers were the, I don't want to say apparent low bidder, but with the amount of time she allotted, as well as the pre-negotiated rates that she had listed, she came out to be the least expensive for the scope of work that was provided to all three of them.
Okay.
Well, Kelly, I have seen this item come many times during the past board meetings. So I look at the history. It was initially approved for $576,000, something in that, around that number.
And which
now,
school was that for?
For this one, locker room, if you look at the
Yes.
history. And so now why it's like become 800 something?
I think Trustee Zhang, I'm not quite sure what your question is or what budget you're referring to.
Okay, so if you look at this one, the locker room, on June 24, 2020, and this one is the locker room expansion, and the history said that the board has approved for 500, no, let me see, what's the number, 576. That's included in your description of the history, the background.
Yes.
And so, I mean, where did the number come from, the 576 in that time?
576,000 is actually construction related costs. So that's actually costs associated with the structure. So it's not the PSA services. It's the actual budget for the construction of the locker rooms and all the various things that were related to that. So that was one cost increase. And then I believe you said there was a second one, and I don't.
Well, this one is, it's 500 something. And now we look at today's proposal, and you are asking for 800, what is the date today? Now today we need to approve for 800, where is it number?
1,805.
18,500.
Yes. So
so
what
these are
happened?
different things. So Trustee Zhang,
Yeah.
we had the cost for actually the construction cost for the locker room. And then if I remember, there was a DSA, after DSA review, there were other requirements which increased the cost. And this is a separate agreement that we have to create for labor management related to union labor and such, right? I can't articulate that very well, so somebody else can. So we have to find somebody. So this labor compliance managers is an outfit that reviews the type of labor that is hired for this project. So this is an additional 18,500 for.
Well, and if I may, I think this one is not asking for additional money. This is asking the board to authorize to enter into the agreement. So the budget has already been set. And this is not going to increase the budget. we are bringing it to you because it is a requirement of the law that any agreement that we enter into as an implementation of the project budget, the board needs to approve. And so this is one of the elements of the project that the board needs to approve, but it's not asking for additional money.
Yeah, so to that point, that's a very good point, Mr. Paranga. And what I would like to see going forward is when we get these authorizations, sometimes there's an amendment, so the terminology can be a bit confusing, where an amendment is really authorizing the next set of dollars that comes from the authorized budget, and it's not increasing the budget, versus an amendment that actually is trying to authorize additional work, different work, which would actually change the budget. So the point you made is great. From this description, it did not jump out to me that this is not additional money.
Right, I have the same question. You know, that's why I see like why the bill comes up with the same project. So if you can clarify, this is within the budget we have already approved, that would be much
Correct.
more clear.
Correct. So if you all recall, at the end of all of our items, I always state that the scope of work falls within the project budget. And we actually do attach the cost to complete spreadsheet to these items. So you all can actually see the exact breakdown of the entire budget of the project and where all the dollars have actually been spent. So, but if you would like me to say it differently or make it more prominent, I'll be more than happy to do that for you all.
So in this particular agenda, at the last sentence, it says this scope of work and contract falls within the project budget. It's written.
Oh, got it. This is the $18,000 is for the PSA coordination.
Correct.
Okay, so addition, you know, somebody need to watch out for the budget for the you know, supervise the progress. And okay, I see that's included in our approved budget. But can you actually explain to me, where did I see, you know, I'm still stuck on that initial labor cost of 750, what is that? And now it's total, where did I see 845? And the difference is what cost?
Trustee Zhang, I think what you might be referring to is item 1512, which in that background, it refers to the 560,000, and I'm using rough numbers here, from June 24, 2020. And the cost that is being asked for in item 1512 is the $845,000. And it sounds like your question is, what's causing the difference between the 560,000 and the 845,000?
Yes.
Even though both fall within the budget, what's causing the difference between those two for ultimately what we might describe as the same project?
Correct.
Okay, Kelly, are you able to speak to the increased cost?
I'm just trying to pull up the documents that you guys are referencing. I apologize for not having that immediately available, but so the cost increase. So right now we're talking about PSA services. So that's the $18,500. That is then being taken out of the existing project budget, which we had approved, I believe, back on June 20. No, I'm sorry. I'm going from the wrong thing now.
Well, that's okay. I think the PSA part
is fine.
Everybody's pretty clear on.
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
It's just
so now
what's happened between June and now and the cost differential.
So June of last year and June of now. So June of 2024, we had submitted an initial application with DSA requesting, hey, we'd like to install these two permanent locker room structures. And they said, okay, great. This is our estimated cost. And we put in a rough order of magnitude estimate that the engineers had developed. Well, while that application was being reviewed, DSA came back and said, no, you guys are in a liquefaction zone. So we're going to require you to, one, change your foundation design. You're going to have to put piles in, which, will stabilize the structure. And we're requiring you to change the entire anchoring design for this particular set of buildings that we believe in the event of, in a case of emergency, earthquake, or any disaster, we want to ensure that it does not move and have any, structural damage. So with those requirements for the modification, there were cost increases associated with the construction. Because when we initially submitted, we assumed, because we had already just completed the construction of the new facility and modernization of some of the existing temporary classrooms on campus, that we would not have any problem. So between last year and this year, there have been all these different code cycle changes. There's new anchoring requirements for structural retrofits of buildings. And because, the location of these particular permanent structures that are going to be going on the campus are in an area where we have, there's a nickname, we say the Fremont soil in the district, where we have some movement. And so DSA has required us to mitigate that. And that's where you get the additional cost from, in that the original did not have these modifications required. And now with the new budget, they do require them. And that's why I went back to you all in January and asked for a budget increase, because that's when we received all of our comments back from the Division of State Architects and all of the requirements, mandating us to do these things in order for us to install those structures.
So in the background, the link where it says on January 30, 2021, you click that, it will actually, what Kelly just explained, listed what the more or less what the makeup of the 1,063,358 additional budget increase, and that was approved by the board on January 30, 2021. So from 576,000 up to 1,639,358.
Okay, and that's the variance of 579,720. That is that's the increase.
The increase amount was 1,063,358.
Correct. That includes the construction total. You see that one?
Right.
That one is especially associated with this locker room, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. It's a bit hard for me to read, but yes, I got a picture. So maybe I have to spend more time to kind of connecting the dots. But yes, thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's good.
So I do have a hard stop at 6 o'clock. So
okay, let's move fast.
As much as we can, and then maybe you can take over, Trustee Zhang.
Oh, you're leaving?
At 6 o'clock, I have to stop.
Okay.
Another meeting. Okay, then let's see, 11 to 11, the remaining Prop 39 funds. So this one I see as there's money sitting in that very restricted pool that can be applied here, right? So
Yes.
This is coming, this money is already approved in the budget for that project.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we had not picked it from this fund, then it would come from Measure E, I suppose.
Sorry, I didn't follow that one. Sorry.
So, I mean, if you had not picked it up from this Prop 39 funds, then it would come from Measure E.
Yes, currently it is this project is actually paid out of Measure E, but those projects are eligible projects under Proposition 39. That's why our recommendation is to use Proposition 39, the remaining fund, so that it would then augment our Measure E money. So yes.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to use the most restrictive category and spend that first.
Right.
Okay. Then the next one is the photography services. Now, I know we have, I suppose these providers have been around for a while. did the prices change any for our students?
Yeah, these rates are applicable to all our parents and students. No district funds are used for paying this, and the parents and students are the one paying for it for what they ordered. The purpose of us doing this is to be able to lock in the price so that the vendors do not charge or do not overcharge our parents and our students.
No, that's a great thing to do, right? But I'm just asking, these rates, how different are they from the last contract? And
yeah, it's a little bit higher than what was approved in 2016, but the way we gauge whether this is a good deal or not was during that time they proposed a maximum % increase every year. And when we put the layers over the last 5 years, the numbers that you're seeing on this table is lesser than those maximum rate. And so we believe that they applied a smaller rate compared to what the maximum rate was.
Okay, sounds good. So student board member Talmia, any questions or concerns about this one? This impacts students directly.
Yeah, no questions. I think only the price increase, but I think that was covered sufficiently.
Okay. Then 11.13. So this is to authorize the agreement again. But is this like a pass-through dollars? We are getting some money from City of Fremont and then we are passing that to...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we hired the contractor, but the entire amount up to $80,000 is paid for by the city. So no district dollars are used for it. We got the benefit of the services.
And this provider that we have selected, was that recommended by the city or did we choose?
We collectively choose them during the time that we started this program. It was a combined effort between the district and the city to identify the candidate.
Okay. Okay, and then the next one, 11.14 is real estate analysis for Marshall School site.
Yes, and so since the board has approved to declare Marshall property as a surplus property, the next step is to do an analysis and make a determination in terms of the best use for the property, and that could include many different potential options. The role of 3D strategies is to provide those options to the board once the analysis is completed.
Okay, now here, did we have like multiple bidders or do we have a contract with the 3D Strategies Inc.?
As far as I know, we've used 3D strategies in the past, but I think in this particular process, we solicited from multiple vendors, and based on, I think, their proposal, I think we are recommending 3D strategies, right, Kelly?
That is correct.
I have a quick comment. I remember that, Kelly, you gave me a report by Dutra Land and Management.
Yes.
And I thought that served the same purpose about land assessment and use. So I saw that, no?
That was not an official report.
Okay.
In the capacity of when the 7-11 committee was meeting, Dutra Land Management, as a courtesy to us, gave us their recommendations as part of the evaluation that the committee was doing. But the report that was provided to you all was not an official report. It was just based on their quick sort of high-level overview analysis as to provide a point of reference for the committee when they were doing their research.
Okay, so that was done for free, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, so I mean, normally I'm used to seeing the bid amount for each one. Here you have 6. You sort the bids from 6 of them, but did we?
Well, in this particular instance, because the services were so highly specialized, all of the companies that I contacted did not provide us with, say, a set fee or a set number. And as you can see with 3D Strategies, they have the way that we ended up going about the solicitation, because several of the companies that we contacted were not familiar with the school district and were ready to, of course, assist us, but they were not prepared to go to the level of analysis based on the type of property that we have. And so when they started providing us with their, I want to say, fee proposals or cost analyses, they were kind of all over the place. And so we ended up sending information back out to them saying, we just want to know if you can provide 5 services for, this period of time, what would that cost be? And so the 3D Strategies returned their proposal, and their fee was the most competitive, as well as the most cost effective for the district to get those services completed.
Okay, I mean, this is the first time I'm seeing one of these. This is this usual and customary as well to go through this process?
It's my understanding whenever
$1,000 is not a small amount, but is this the usual thing to do, or do we work with a broker that eventually will be paying commissions to brokers, right? When the property.
Yes, that is my same question. Let's see if we use him to sell our property. I mean, is that $20,000 going to be waived? And usually, I mean, they gave you the analysis for free. And then I have the same question. Why can't we use Dutra Land and Management? Because they are pretty big in our area also. They are the one brokered the land for what's called Bringhurst, right?
Yes.
And I'm curious about their bid. What's their bid?
In speaking with Dutra Land Management, they stated that they were not interested in doing the full analysis, but they would be interested once the analysis was complete to then do the brokering and the sale of the property, if that is the direction that the board ends up going in.
That's interesting. Okay. And so is this the first time we do this? And again, that's the same price. Is the price customary? $20,000.
The price is based over a 3 to 4 month period of time. So if I recall, and I don't have the contract directly in front of me, they are basically giving us a lump sum fee over a period of time to complete, lots of different tasks. And so their fee is based on them completing those tasks, and it does not obligate the district to use them for the sale of the property, nor any additional services beyond this particular transaction. And so that differed significantly from some of the others that we actually did speak with. So, and as far as the process goes, I can't speak to what happened before because I am new to the district. So this is the only transaction of this type that I've had an opportunity to participate in with Fremont. But I don't know, Raul, did you have any history or comments that you'd like to share to provide some clarification on this for them?
The district has not been in a situation where we had to surplus the property in the last 9 years that I've been involved with the district. We have been involved as a district in acquiring property, which is the opposite of this. But in those process, we had to use a broker. Specific example was what we call the horse property, or it's the Fremont Dakota property. During that time, we used Dutra Land to be able to acquire the property. But like I said, we have not been in a situation where we have to surplus and sell a property.
Okay, I would hold on to this. I have more questions. I just thought that if I want to return somebody's service, usually it's free unless we want to go with this person to sell our property. You see, and now we don't want him does the research and then ask Dutra to sell our property. Now we pay extra, for the sales commission.
So there are, in some cases, there are specific reasons why it is beneficial for the district for this to be separate, especially that the board really has not decided whether this property would be sold or whatever the use is. The purpose of this service is to provide options on what would be the best use of the property. Now, the challenge of hiring somebody who is a broker would be that there is the appearance that they're going to lead you into selling the property, because that would mean more commission for the consultant. And so in some ways, there is a benefit of having the separate, like a separation of duty, so that there is no conflict, there's no appearance of the conflict of interest. And so we want to avoid somebody leading you into it when the main purpose of this step is to be able to determine the best use. And it could be selling it, or it could be leasing it, or it could be something else.
Yes, having an unbiased feedback when you're not the broker trying to actually implement the action seems like a good thought, but perhaps we should deliberate more in the meeting itself. Trustee Zhang.
Sure, but okay, let's talk more.
And the other thing is too, we're working very closely with DWK, and this is actually what Associate Superintendent Parangal said is one of the reasons why they had recommended to us that we create a neutral environment for us to have this analysis done, so that we don't get into those gray areas where someone can then challenge us and say, hey, this person is benefiting, or has an unfair advantage over another because they did the analysis of the work. So I'd be happy to also have them prepare some information for you on that to review in one of your board updates as well.
I think I would like to have several bids, and I think 20,000 is high. That's my opinion. So if you can give me other people's bids, or find some more who are capable of doing this, I'd like to see the bids.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so at this point, I have to drop off. Trustee Zhang, can you continue from here?
Sure, the most important one. Okay, all right. Proposed budget. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Well, now that's a very long 365 pages. So can Raul or someone else give us an overview on this one?
Yeah, I could do maybe a 2-minute review.
Okay.
So we when the board did a public hearing on June 2nd, that was a place where we had to start and finalize our proposed budget. And in this document, there was not a lot of changes from the time that you received them on the public hearing until now, other than adding a 1 FTE counselor for the American High School, as requested by the board during the public hearing. And the other one was to designate 1% of the expenditures as what we call reserve variance. If you recall, at the public hearing, there were concerns about uncertainties of the average daily attendance, uncertainties about some of the budget cuts that the board has approved, and a few other uncertainties because the state really has not approved the budget yet. And so at the meeting, I recommended that we reinstate this particular designation to allow for any flexibility in the event that any of those uncertainties were to occur. And by having this, then you have about $4.3 million that you could use in the event that the ADA drops, or if one of the budget cuts don't materialize, and whatever the net amount is would remain the same. And so based on that information, those two changes that we made, we are projecting to end our 21-22 with 6.23% reserve. And we also made a multi-year projection, which also included what our projected reserve in the out years. And so if you click those.
Oh, I see that.
yeah.
Is it page 73? You have additional designated reserve. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. And that's 1%. That's $4.3 million. And if you click on the attach or the link document on page 70 to 70 and above.
Yes, 7 to 75.
Right. You will see that in 22-23 and 23-24, and by the way, I just noticed that our years were off, right? It's supposed to be 23-24 on the last column. We maintained, maintained the reserve variance of 4.2 million in the out years.
Okay.
Yeah, the idea here is that as we come close to the end of the year, and as we define more and more our revenues and our expenditure, then the board may release this and let this flow into the total reserve. And that would happen probably in the second interim report in March, or perhaps sometime in June when we do the estimated actual. At that point, we already know what our ADA, we already know what our expenditures are, and we're not anticipating any more unplanned expenses because we are closer to the end of the year. And so that was the idea here and the plan moving forward. However, the out years, the subsequent years, the 22-23 and 23-24, will remain the reserve variance until again we get into the second interim period for those fiscal years. So it's just one way of setting aside some more funds to allow for any uncertainties.
Right. So that means you are mentioning it's a board designated reserve 1%. And we always we have always conduct business this way.
No, I'm referring to the one above that. If you look at
you are referring that to this reserve variance, right? Okay.
Yes.
I got it.
Yes.
So okay. So then you add additional 1%.
Correct.
Okay. So, okay, state mandated is, now let's look at the B, reserve. The state mandated 2%, and then board designated reserve, and that's 4.2 million for next year. But then that means you should add another one, which is the reserve. Oh, okay.
Once we set aside, the reason why we have them on in item A is because it's a designation. We don't call them reserve until it drops into item B. It is not a reserve at this time. It is a designation for any fluctuations as a result of those uncertainties.
Got it. Okay.
And so it is netted out from the reserve. And so when the county asks, what is your reserve? We say it's 6.23%, 4.67%, and 4.22. Now, when we go into the second interim, assuming everything is equal and let's say no change, and let's say we get to the second interim, that number becomes 7.23, 5.67, and 5.22 in the second interim, because we will drop them into the reserve once we know for sure that our revenue and expenditure are not going to change any longer.
Got it.
Yeah.
So what is this, the B, reserve, additional designated reserve? I mean, can you just give me an example? I mean, I forgot.
So basically that's a catch-all. So if you look at the ending fund balance above, in 21-22, our projected ending fund balance is $31.5 million, right? And then our total designations, including the reserve variance, is about $4.8 million. Then from there, we deducted the state mandated reserve of 2%. And further, we deducted board designated reserve of 1%. That leaves us with $13.8 million, which we call them
got it. It's just a leftover.
Yeah, so it's a leftover. And so in the state report, that is typically called undesignated reserve. But in this district, we call them additional designated reserve because they are. We would like to make sure that we designate them, and we designate them for economic uncertainties.
Got it. Thank you so much for the explanation.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So that's my summary of the budget. So in as far as the changes from June 2nd to now, those are the only two changes. It's the 1 FTE counselor at American High School, the putting a designation of 1% to cover any potential uncertainties.
Okay. Well, that's good. We only have two. Yeah, that's exactly what I want to find out. What's the difference between this one and the last one? But I do have a question on the page 68 on the school resource officer designation. And you said approved reduction. Approved reduction is 442,000, and then on the 2021 to 22, you put 442.5 thousand. But I thought we should put more because our budget is 913.
What page are you in? I'm trying to follow
68.
You. 68. I'm on page 68. Okay.
Oh, sorry. What is this? This is a tier 1. Though. Okay, that's actually we're talking about the old proposal, the tier 1. Yeah, forget that part.
Yeah, those were from the budget reductions we made in the end of February. That's where that information is being reflected from.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at the wrong page. But overall, I just want to make sure we put 913,000 into our real budget on school resource officer.
Yes, and you'll be able to see that if I could refer you to, let me just see, I think on the multi-year projection item,
They'll be on the expense.
There you go. On page 64, towards the top, page 64, item G.
G.
Yeah, second paragraph. The cost of school resource officer is included in the current and subsequent years. However, it is funded from CARES Act in the current year and unrestricted general fund in the subsequent years.
I see. Yes. Okay, unrestricted fund from the subsequent year. So that means we will see that on the subsequent year in the general expense, right? General fund under the expense category.
Yes, it's already included on the multi-year projection that I explained to you. That's already all included in it.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. So then we're done with this one. Let's see what else. Approved local control. That we have done, right?
So the board has done a public hearing on it,
right? Yes.
And so this is now coming back to you for approval.
Okay.
And there are no changes from the time that it was presented to you to this version of the LCAPs.
Okay. All right. So that's all good. And then the next two items, there's no budget impacted activity. And let's look at 15.7 on the master schedule and course offering. And so this is just a plan to see how we come with the master schedule and some changes in one or two high schools. So I want to know that based on the data, have we added some sections from various schools? I don't get the data from this presentation.
So I think I can, let me give it a shot, Superintendent, and I will, and then if you could follow up on it. On slide number 4.
Okay.
Here, we are explaining here how we are calculating the allocation, the staffing allocation for every secondary site. What you see here on the bullet points are all the elements that we use in calculating how many FTE, how many sections we are providing at every school site. There is one thing here which is on maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first 5 bullets, those are all generally paid for by the general fund. The last bullet, however, additional staffing funded by categorical program. If a school site has some categorical program, they have the ability to be able to hire perhaps additional sections that are aligned to the grant. So for example, if there's a specific grant that they receive from the state, they could hire additional section on it, but it has to align to those grants. Unlike the first 5 bullets, those are inclusive of all the core subjects, electives, PE, and things like that. So, and that's I think the slide that I think would come close to your question. Superintendent, do you have any other addition to that?
No, and I think, Trustee Zhang, in terms of have we added any sections at any particular high schools, we have not added a singular section other than what we talked about during the expanded learning opportunity grants. And we allocated additional sections to each high school there. Now, as we go through this season and as we go through the summer, we're constantly in conversations with our high school principals to talk about what their master schedules need and what course offerings are there. But in terms of allocating an additional section here to one school or here to another school, beyond what we've allocated for expanded learning opportunity grants where the board approved additional sections, I'm not aware that we've added any individual particular sections.
Okay, so the particular question I received is from Irvington High School. Remember, you got numerous emails that talking about students could not get into this AP English, and there are, I think, close to 30 students who could not get enrolled. So that is particular to this high school. So have staff look at the number and decide to, kind of adjust the numbers, the sessions to accommodate to the increased student for demand.
Well,
that's like specific.
Right. So I don't think that that's happened, but I think that one thing that we do have happen is we do have these types of things come up where we have a group of students who maybe aren't able to get the class that they want. And each comprehensive high school has to go through an analysis of what are their course offerings. And we allocate the sections based on a staffing amount, and then we build the master schedule from there. And there are going to be examples each year where certain students may not get their first choice of courses. And it may be because the school has a priority order in which they're maybe granting those course requests to students in higher grades first. So maybe if they're in a younger class, they have another opportunity to take the course later. But this is also part of the reason this agenda item, I believe, was requested by trustees, is to have further conversation about this, which is why we've crafted this agenda item here. And I can check in with the administration from Irvington, but we also know that at other comprehensive high schools, there are some courses that students wanted.
Yes, absolutely. There is other students from other schools. They probably want to do other class like digital drawing, and they I think American high school, and they request that they could not have teachers. So that's exactly what I want to see is does staff look at the data to see in which school they have high demand on certain classes, and then this school cannot accommodate. And then while other school have more, a surplus of teachers. So, you know, what are the strategies we can, you know, help each other?
Yes,
That is,
and we can certainly discuss that more. I think this presentation will be a great platform for some of those things. But
okay.
when the schools are building the master schedule, they're doing that, and it's generally predicated based on the student requests. So almost their entire framework of the master schedule is built on what the majority of the needs are for the student population. And we try and staff them in a way where they don't end up with a surplus. But
right.
This is certainly something that we can continue to talk about, and perhaps Mr. Larson can speak more directly to when we have our board meeting on Thursday.
Okay.
In addition to that, I think what we do is we are in constant communication with our comprehensive high schools and middle schools, and evaluate their enrollment almost on a regular basis. And based on that enrollment, we apply the formula that is highlighted on slide number 4 to see if the amount of staffing that we have provided is still the right amount of staffing. And if we feel that they have more enrollment than what we originally anticipated, then that is when the principal and the business services discuss this and talk about the opportunity to be able to add additional sections. And so that happens all on a regular basis, starting on the springtime all the way to the beginning of school, and find out if we need to add additional staffing or not. But that is generally driven by the number of enrollment enrolling at that particular school.
Okay, so then I would assume that the staff are working during the summer and look at all this data, or they would start working, you know, a few days before school starts. How do you know the number, and then you can see, okay, is it too late to add you know, teachers or sessions now for next year, so that we can accommodate for the demand?
Well,
how frequently are we looking at the numbers?
So we look at the numbers throughout the entire summer. Our administrators at the district office work throughout the entire summer. Our high school principals and their administration team do have time off during the summer. Knowing comprehensive high schools the way that I do and that we do, I know they're still continuing to check their enrollment numbers even when they're off, but they're putting in a lot of work before the students leave for the year and building that master schedule. And I think, you know, an important part of the conversation when we talk about meeting the demand is really understanding that in a large context, because we want to be responsive as we can be for every demand and need of our students. But we also have to look at what does that mean for our staffing ratios. And when a school district like ours, and like most school districts, has 85% of our budget roughly going towards personnel costs, we have to be very cognizant about the overall sections and the staffing. And it may seem small, but if we add 2 or 3 sections at each high school just to meet additional demand, before we know it, we're at, you know, we could be at 3 or 4 additional teachers. And so then we have to also look at the sustainability of that type of a program. And we want to make sure that we're allocating staff with a consistent formula. And so I think this will be a good conversation for the meeting on Thursday night. But our staff is certainly really trying to meet all the demands of students even before we go into summer. And in terms of your question of is it too late? When we have, and I don't know that we've had them recently, but when districts have enrollment increases in the middle of the summer, we can add some sections at the beginning of the school year. And sometimes what we'll do is offer 2 or 3 additional sections. And some of the staff that we have on hand already will pick up those additional sections, either because they're part-time or because we have some individuals who might be willing to work above and beyond their normal 1.0 contract.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Let's move to the next one. Okay. Contract amendment. Okay, that one is fine. 15.9. That is okay. And oh, about this food service, and it's a fixed amount. So are we going to adjust the numbers based on enrollment when school opens?
No, this is so this is the fixed amount that they charge,
Right.
regardless of the enrollment or regardless of the participation.
Okay, but basically it's based on the students. I see there's numbers like let's see where it is. Okay, if you look at this one, it said breakfast, lunch, snack. So those are the units, means the number of students needs this thing?
Not necessarily. Those are the estimated number of meals that we anticipate to serve.
Okay.
And this is actually based on the assumption of fully reopening.
Okay.
You know, so if the number of participation is less, then this number would be less. So the rate that you see here is what I mean, the fixed amount, the fixed.
Yeah, the rate is fixed, but the units we can adjust, right?
Yes, and this estimated number of the meals is a fully reopened school.
Okay. What I'm saying is I think who can just monitor those numbers and the students so we don't waste food. You know, sometimes like we order more food and then maybe the food get wasted.
Yes, and so while this is an estimate of how much we're going to be serving, the logistics of them is that our child nutrition department continue to work very closely with our principals to determine what the production is for every day. Actually, they look at the production and they readjust based on the number of students who are coming in and eating at the cafeteria. So if on day one we prepared 100 meals and only 80 of them shows up, well, tomorrow we're going to try to adjust our production. And conversely, if we run short today, then tomorrow we're going to need to increase our production, because depending on the day, there may be some favorite food that they want to eat. And so those are all the analysis that we do to adjust our production. But we understand what you're saying about making sure that there is no waste. And that's the function of the production analysis.
Okay, wonderful. Let's see what else required for data collection under, is this a budget related? The 15.11?
Yes, it is. And this is what I consider investing to gain money. So we need to, in this case, invest $125,000 with the possible opportunity of garnering about $4.4 million in grant. This money is going to be paid for by the CARES Act or the ESSER 2, which is one of the eligible expenses under the ESSER grant. And if and when we become, or if and when we get approved, there's a possibility that we could get $4.4 million to be used to retrofit our HVAC. And I think that's what it is, right? Kelly, is for heating, ventilation, air conditioning.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
And
investing 125 for potentially getting 4.4.
That's totally worth it. But okay, if you don't do it, you will not get 4.4, right?
Well, yes,
yes,
you're correct.
But do you think some school would not do it, or they would just fail to notice? Possible?
Yes and no. There are capacity issues. A lot of times, because of lack of capacity in a particular school district, sometimes they ignore these things like this because they just don't have enough people to be able to pursue the grant. But on the opposite side of that, there are big districts in Southern California who could actually just grab most of this money because they have all the people in the world to be able to apply for the grant. And so you're on both ends of the spectrum. We in Fremont, we would like to propose to invest this money so that we could at least get in line to get this money. So.
Okay, so who are the staff watching out for those kind of grants from the business division?
Generally, facilities department, like Kelly and her team. So.
Okay, thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's see. Move on. Locker room. Okay, that's that. Construction of portable locker room expansion. Oh, is this the one we talk about? Oh yeah, that's exactly. You see that 847.
That is correct.
Yes.
Right. And then the previous one we see is 809 something, right? A slightly difference, from a history.
Yes, but remember, we reviewed the budget increases from the time frame. So that's why the number is different.
Yes, slightly different. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Plan to return to in person. That is okay. And I guess we're done. Well, anything else? Anyone want to add or questions from anyone?
I just want to make sure we didn't cover it in the beginning. Did we receive any public comment? Raíz or Raul, did you get any?
No, I did not get any. But
okay, I did not either. So thank you.
Yeah.
Just making sure we cover that.
Yeah, Trustee Zhang, I think you jumped into 15.2 earlier, but we didn't comment on 15.1. I just want to make sure that we didn't miss that one. That one has a fiscal impact on it.
Okay.
And it's also quite important.
Okay.
This is an action item that is requesting authorization for $921,000 funded by ESSER 2. And this is to acquire additional air purifiers to cover, our classrooms and to actually complement what currently exists in our classrooms, and also to provide air purifiers to our libraries and to our offices that has student in them. That will cover that. But in addition to that, also to propose to use $131,000 for hands-free water filling station. And so between the air purifiers and the water filling station, that's about $921,000. That will be funded by the ESSER 2 funding.
Yeah, I remember we talked about hands-free, and that's a very good thing to do for kids. But we have implemented some air filters, right? Already.
Well, we've already purchased 1,600 air purifiers to cover each and every classroom. The air purifiers that we acquire cover 700 square feet. But classrooms are generally about 960 square feet. By adding another unit, we will be covering more than the size of the classroom to provide additional air purification. In addition to that, we've also upgraded our filter to our HVAC. And so between the two air purifiers in the classroom, plus the upgraded filter in our ventilation system, we think that would provide or minimize any type of exposure. And so that was this proposal here, is to acquire additional 1,600 units of air purifiers.
Okay, thank you for that. And that is still, we have a budget for that. It's yeah, it's a CARE Act.
Yes.
Is there any leftover from this CARE Act?
We're getting very close to spending them down, but we are also applying for ESSER 3, where there is the third version of this. We submitted our, we actually lined up for that money, and I think we still have to submit a couple of documents in order for us to be able to get the money. But we are anticipating to receive some money on the third version of ESSER.
Okay. So do you have idea like what amount?
I think it's a little bit over 8 million, right, Mr. Abasi?
Yes, 8.7 million.
Yes.
Okay, and when do we have to spend?
That can be spent until 2024, June
Wow.
2024.
Well, that's wonderful. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. I guess I don't have any other questions.
Well, thank you, Trustee Zhang. Thank you, staff, for your time today. Tyler, thank you for being here for the recording, and we wish you all a great rest of the evening.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Have a good night.
Good evening. Bye.